I'm Patrick Pacheco. Coming up on Theater All the Moving Parts, a chat with freestyle rapper Anthony Veneziale, who along with Lin-Manuel Miranda and Tommy Kail, created the Broadway smash Freestyle Love Supreme. Hello, I'm Patrick Pacheco, and welcome to this virtual episode of Theater All the Moving Parts. Before the pandemic, a delightful sleeper hit on Broadway last fall was Freestyle Love Supreme, a hip-hop improvisational comedy show created by Lin-Manuel Miranda, Tommy Kail, and Anthony Veneziale. Since then, Anthony, a freestyle rapper, has continued to virtually spread its message of community, self-esteem, and collaboration through joyful chaos. And here to talk about it is Anthony himself. Welcome, Anthony.
Hello. Thank you so very much for having me here, Patrick.
Good to be with you. Anthony, can you give us a primer on the basic tenets of FLS? And we probably should say that it started decades ago when you, several of you, were students at Wesleyan College.
Yeah, I think a primer on Freestyle Love Supreme would be to take it back to Wesleyan, where I attended the University of Wesleyan up in Connecticut, along with Thomas Kail. We had a production company together that started there called Backhouse Productions. We did a show called Hamlet Machine, which is the Heiner Mueller sort of shrunken head of Hamlet. And we wanted to do our version that was sort of the shrunken head of Hamlet that was all about Wesleyan. It was supposed to be a very diverse place, and it was, but there wasn't much dialogue or talk happening between people who looked different from one another. So we wanted to do a show all about that. And one of the things we did was we had improv and freestyle rapping be a big part of that process. And basically freestyle rap is you are willing to be informed by the beat. So hopefully someone is holding a beat or there is some sort of a beat. And then you are willing to be changed by that which comes before you and that which comes after you. That's really what freestyling in a nutshell means. And for us, we think that it is best when you really support each other. So having an environment of deep support and deep trust allows you to take these big, bold risks where you are making stuff up in the moment.
And it's totally in the moment and totally improv, nothing pre-planned at all. So you're on the high wire. There's a terrific Hulu documentary. And what struck me about it is that everybody in the documentary said, my personal and my creative life was formed by FLS. How did it form you? How did it shape you?
You know, I think when a collective of people are willing to be inspired and informed and boosted and sort of bolstered by other people who are trying something that feels like a magic trick, that feels like impossible, then you become really, really confident. You become really capable. You know, you say to yourself, this couldn't be any harder than making up a rap song in the moment, you know? And so it allows you in some ways to take big risks. You know, I think what you're doing is you're creating this neural network in your brain that says, I'm gonna try. And you know what? I might fail while I'm trying, but I'm still gonna come out on the other side very capable. And that's why I think Lin is able to take a lot of the big, bold risks that he has. I think that's why Chris Jackson is able to be the performer that he is, Shockwave, the beatboxer that he is, the musicians, Bill Sherman, who writes all the music for Sesame Street. You know, a lot of us cut our teeth doing this, and it really is failing fast. You know, and I think that's the great thing about improv and improv thinking. It really shapes that neural network that says, I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna fail, and I'm gonna learn from that and keep going.
In the documentary, Lin-Manuel says that when he reached global fame, obviously in The Heights and Hamilton, directed by Tommy Kail, he said he was ready for it. How do you suppose FLS helped him to be ready for it?
You know, I think the other thing about our crew is that we feel a lot like a family and it feels a lot like home. And I think Tommy Kail has a particular genius in lots of different ways, but I think he and I, from the very first show that we ever did, way back at Wesleyan, till today, we really want people to be authentically themselves. And we want them to be fully themselves. They don't have to shade that. They don't have to be something different. And we're going to lead that with like vulnerability as well. So I think both Tommy and I value sharing this full version of yourself. And when you do that, what ends up happening is that you make decisions in your life that feel you're proud of and you want to share with the rest of the family. Like each time we see each other, there's just so much we can't wait to hear about each other, right? And there's just so many adventures, and like we constantly text each other. This is a really supportive environment. And if everyone had that, if everyone had lots of people who look different from each other saying to them that they matter and that we really want to see you succeed, I think we'd live in a better world.
You said something earlier that seemed contradictory, and that was that this thing of taking risks actually makes you more confident. What happens when you just fall on your face, when it's just a humiliating exercise, which it must when you do take risks? How do you reel back to get them back in the game?
Yeah, I think humility is awesome. And I think humiliation is something that we all are going to face. And so being uncomfortable is a big part of this process. And allowing yourself to get comfortable with discomfort or uncomfortability is a really important life skill. And so I think knowing that when you do fall on your face, that there are other people around you who say, I'm really proud of you for trying, and let me help you get back up. It's not just about you yourself pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. I know this is like a big American myth that we have around like individualism and frontierism, right? It kind of even gets back to the roots of our country, going and being settlers on these wild terrains. But no one could do that all on their own. No one. And it takes each other. It takes others to be truly yourself, which is it is very contradictory, but I really believe it.
Given the roots of rap and hip hop in the Black community, how did you handle the accusations, if they came, of cultural appropriation?
Yeah, first and foremost, this art form is one that was born in the Bronx, and it was born out of disenfranchisement, right? It was born by these amazing creative geniuses who saw these break beats, who saw these moments to continue to push and hear and resample that break beat over and over so that their bodies could have this release. Because in the Bronx at the time, in the early 70s, there is so much economic despair. There is so much police brutality towards Blacks and Latinx and anyone who didn't look like what America, quote unquote, when it was great again, was supposed to look like. And, I think that art form and saying I matter and I'm here and I have value is so incredible. And that is something that is uniquely Black. And so rap in a lot of ways has, and hip hop has that root. I was very interested in honoring that and then also adding this improvisational element, which is much more rooted in viola spolin and amazing, powerful women who created these techniques to take theater on sort of this really interesting, exploratory, digging into your own roots and who you were. Because I think all of us ultimately feel disenfranchised in some way, right? Unless you're Donald Trump, there is something about you that doesn't fit, right? That isn't the mainstream. We all feel somewhat out of a fish out of water. And so I think harnessing that from what improvisation is and coupling it with hip hop, I felt like the improv scene needed that. Like it was very white. When I did improv in the late 90s in New York, it mostly looked like me. And I looked around and said, I don't want to be a part of this art form if we don't open the doors and have lots of more perspectives in here. And so that's why I wanted to use the language of hip hop. I knew that it wasn't the language that is natural to someone who looks like me, but I wanted to create more opportunities for people who didn't look like me in improv. So that's how I generally talk about hip hop and freestyling.
And your philosophy really is about enfranchisement. It's about community. It's about creating togetherness. And 30% of what you do is the audience. Obviously, there's no audience right now. Everything is virtual. But when there was an audience, what was the one key element that you had to establish early on for them to take the ride? Because I'm sure a lot of people were just folding their arms and standing back.
Well, I think it's a combination of things, but I think first and foremost, psychological trust, right? That there's something that the audience has to say, okay, I'm going to be taken care of here. And what I love most about our show, yes, it's an improvisational show, but there's music involved in it. And music has mathematical structure to it. And there's something about music that allows an audience to unfold those arms, right? So, and we start very much with that. Even the way we use our voices in the beginning, it's almost percussive, it's almost melodic. It's much more about the music of it than about we're taking the risks. What I think we do with our opening song is say, hey, we're going to ease into this together, and it's going to be pretty darn amazing. And the music does that right away, right? And it gets to this other part of our brain that's a much more sort of emotional epicenter for us. It's not about that like cognitive, I'm judging you. It's a little bit more, oh, wow, this sounds like blank. And that takes me to blank. And I feel really, fill in the XYZ there. So that's one of the things we do.
And was there ever a moment, a central moment, that you thought, we've got them, they're on the ride?
I mean, that's something that you kind of like moment to moment, right? Like there are some times at the beginning of the show when we get that first word, like hearing from the audience, the first time we hear from the audience, that to me is the big tell. And I kind of have to give them one or two little cues that say, you are completely welcome to be fully yourself here. And I really encourage you to be the best version of yourself. And I think that's something that we really, really emphasize, even inside of our own family, even inside of Freestyle Love Supreme. We're always trying to go up the ladder. We're always trying to get the rung above. We're never trying to get the rung below. So there's a little bit of shepherding that happens where I'm kind of, and some of those first cues, right? So when I say, hey, we need a verb, an action word, that's sort of very first thing that I ask for them, I give them examples. And I usually give them 3 examples. And I try to make it be very particular to the night that it is, right? So
can you give us 3 examples?
Yeah, sure. So a verb like vote, impeach, or run, right? So what I've said to them is, hey, here's something coming up, right? The vote, I get it, I'm with you. Impeach, that's something that probably happened and a lot of us had on our mind's eye. Run, some of us might want to run away. So what I'm saying is, I get you. I get the environment we're in right now. I'm informed by this moment. Also, I've taken those off the board, right? So those words, now that I've used them as an example, they can't give them to me. So we've probably done the word impeach before, and we don't like repeating ourselves. Freestyling is about discovering the new and the novel each time. So if every night we got that first word was impeached, we're not doing our job. So I have to take it off the table right at the beginning.
What's one word that startled and frightened you or terrified you and thought, how are we going to do this?
I love words. I'm a huge word fan and English language fan. So I always think of them as platforms to jump from. So no words necessarily scare me per se. I do know that sometimes there are words that might feel like it's a little bit more politically charged. But I also know that the rest of my group is along for this journey too. So for example, the word defenestrate, right? Let's say someone throws out the word defenestrate. Mm-hmm. They are trying to say to the rest of the audience, look, I'm going to try to stump them. Look how clever I am. I'm using a word that is probably not known by most people. Let's see what they do with it. So behind me, then I've got other people who are like, I don't know, two touch, what does that mean? And I'll be like, oh, it's cool, we got your back. I might have to throw that word out the window because we've used it before, or we'll jump into it, right? So I think it's a matter of accepting whatever the level of challenge the audience wants to give you and say, cool, we got you, like, let's do it. Yeah, and being honest. Yeah, and being honest about it.
Defenestrate means to throw out the window, which you just said.
Right, yes, defenestrate typically means throwing furniture specifically out the window. It comes from this very strange event that happened in Austria in the 17th century, right? So it's like this interesting amalgamation of concepts and ideas about overthrowing, and the prince was upset, and some furniture went out the window, and hence we have a defended trade.
There are no audiences, but you established with some colleagues the FLS Academy, and it's a lab for you. And what I was struck by is that you said what you are doing research on is how improv affects the brain, which I think is a fascinating area of exploration. What have you discovered about how improv affects the brain, and how do you teach it to your students at FLS?
I mean, I am fascinated by and love the study of neuroscience. My grandmother was affected by Alzheimer's, and ever since then, I've been really in the pursuit of understanding this Pandora's box that is our brain, right? There are really disparate brain types. There are really different and disparate styles and modalities of thinking and ways that people like to learn. You have audible learners, you have people who are very visual learners, you have experiential learners. But for us, we're fascinated to see some of the outcomes and what parts of our brains are being used and why. So we partnered up with Dr. Charles Lim, who's out of UCSF, for some research to put improvisers into fMRI machines. And so what that helps us to do is learn where the epicenters of communication, creativity, and collaboration might exist, and how we can start reinforcing neural networks that are helpful for you in communication, that are helpful for you in performance. And so what we're seeing is there's these two very active parts of your brain when you do this kind of communication. One's called the medial lateral prefrontal cortex, and the other's the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. The dorsal lateral is your judging brain. That's the part of your brain that's like your inner critic. I always call it the Stadler and Waldorf from the Muppet Show, kind of sitting in the back there, being like, why did you wear that scarf today? What are you doing? Right? So that's sort of like your judging brain. And then this other part, the medial lateral prefrontal cortex, that's a little bit more your like flow state. That's when you're kind of like, it feels like almost you stop thinking and time disappears and you're just in it and you're like crushing it. And that can come in lots of different ways for people, right? For some people, it's like, that happens to me when I go on runs, or that happens to me when I do yoga or sailing or painting or walking my dog. So what we're trying to do is create a process that gets you to that part of your brain, so you're much more capable in creating and being authentically yourself.
At any given moment, how many students do you have at FLS Academy, and what are the demographics of it?
Yeah, so our mission statement at Freestyle Love Supreme Academy is to foster a community of diverse creative voices. So for us, it is paramount that we have people who look and think very differently from each other in those rooms. We generally do about up to 20 people per class. We had as many as 5 classes running at the same time before pandemic times. Since pandemic, we've virtualized our training and we do things online. And we sometimes will have 100 people online in those classes, and we do breakout rooms where we then have a facilitator with about 12 people per facilitator. We find those are sort of the magic numbers. And we're really invested in figuring out how to create and foster that community. So we have applications, and in those applications, we learn about our people who want to participate. And so when we get that information, we try to build squads that are very different from each other. And that means age, that means race, that means orientation, that means beliefs. And we really, really value having these vulnerable conversations where people can share perspectives and potentially learn about themselves and each other. Like that's it. If we're able to do that, then I think we're going to get to something that's really important and what's been missing for the last, let's call it 5, 6 years with social media and with the way that people are isolating themselves and forgetting that we coexist with neighbors and that we're all a part of this one country and we don't have to be labeled. We can actually be full representations of ourselves.
And when you have these 12 people in the classroom, as in an audience, does the role of rhythm help sort of create a safe environment?
Yeah. Yeah, Patrick, there's this amazing research that's being done out of Eastern Michigan State University and elsewhere as well. But I know that's the epicenter of trust based on rhythmic and beat. So there's this great study that has been done with toddlers and with under 2 year olds around strangers, and that stranger bopping up and down to a beat. And then the child also noticing them mimicking bopping up and down to the beat. And within 2 minutes, they feel like they can place trust on this stranger when they are in rhythm, when they are syncopated together. Now, this is why I think we all love theater so much. There is something about a theatrical experience that syncopates our hearts. When we are experiencing things together collectively, we actually start slowing and matching up heartbeats with all the people in the theater around us. And so this is something that is hugely important. And I think it goes back to in utero. The very first thing that we really become aware of is the heartbeat, is that rhythm. So the rhythm of our mother is something that will always go back to the reptilian part of our brain that says we're safe. This is something that's actually pretty good. So when we use and rely, and that's what hip hop does, it is all that's that break beat, right? That thing that we were talking about before, those break beats, that is a way for human beings to envelop each other in trust and a trusting environment, I believe hugely.
And are you working with children, Anthony?
Yes. Yeah, we have as young as 6. They're a part of what's called the Freestyle Clubhouse. So 6 to 11-year-olds are in the Freestyle Clubhouse. We have amazing facilitators who have a lot of experience. We did camp with them this summer. We also do Thursday evenings to try to give parents a break during COVID times. So we do like Thursday nights, date night for the parents. We got the kids virtually, like let us entertain them and be with them and let them learn from each other for about an hour to 2 hours.
I know that you charge for your classes. Do you have an avenue for people, underprivileged young people who may want to participate?
Absolutely. And this is a part of that mission statement, fostering a community of diverse creative voices. We know that that's going to mean that some people are not necessarily able to afford this opportunity. So anytime we do shows, and we just did one on October 2nd for the Freestyle Supreme Academy to kind of commemorate the opening night of Freestyle Love Supreme, we are taking portions of that and setting it towards scholarships. We also like to pay the people inside of the academy who perform. So if they do a show, unlike almost any other improv school out there, they're going to get paid. Now, they also have an opportunity to check a box that says, instead of paying me the $20 or $50, whatever it is that the door split ends up being for all of these 20 people, you can put that towards a scholarship to help somebody else have this opportunity. With that said, we have strategic partnerships as well that are all about scholarships and reaching out to people all around the United States currently, and we're hoping the world soon. And then if there are people inside of the academy who know others who they think would be valuable to be a part of this community, we also have roads and avenues for people to sort of nominate scholarship attendees.
We only have time for a couple of questions. One is, what has the pandemic taught you?
Wow. Well, I think the pandemic is a great textbook example of something called uncertainty principle. And this is something that improv deals with a lot, but we don't know what's about to happen, right? We humans love to plan. And the globe and the micro organisms that live on it said, not so fast, humans. And so I think what I learned is that having improv thinking as a tool is something that helps humans deal with uncertainty. And so that is why we continue to really try to do this work as much as we can. It's hugely important and it's comforting. So when you are in this community and you are able to share some of that uncertainty with each other and deal with it in the moment, especially like freestyling, then you build that muscle. You build that ability to say, I'll handle this moment to moment.
And humility is a big lesson of the pandemic. The theatrical titans that were striding Broadway have no more power than the unemployed actor. Hopefully it makes them more empathetic.
Yeah, I love empathy. I love improv as an empathy machine as well. And I think hopefully all of us can take away from the pandemic that A, we're incredibly lucky to be alive. B, we need each other. Like theater only exists with other humans. I mean, we try to do it on Zoom and there's something you can get from that, but you can't get that syncopated heartbeat that you get when you're in the room with others. And then finally, C, I think the thing that is super important about the pandemic is that it's fleeting. And so enjoy what you can.
A final question, Anthony. Um, how do we see your work on the internet, whether it is the show of Freestyle Love Supreme and the work that you're doing at the Academy?
So you can always go to fls.academy. You can apply. We'd love for you to apply. We're always looking for, people who are willing to try this creative risk, and sharpen their creative voice. And then we do a lot of alumni outreach. So once you're a part of that community, there's sort of these different groups that you get put into, and we're going to try to be doing shows every month. You can also go to freestylelovesupreme.com. We announce all of the stuff on that. You can sign up for our mailing list there. I also have this other company called speechlessinc.com. That is actually a little bit more for an individual. So those often are things that, what we're looking for in Freestyle Love Supreme Academy is how you build that community. In Speechless Inc., that's a little bit more about how can I take improv thinking and make my voice, my authentic voice, be heard.
I thank you so much for a most stimulating conversation, Anthony. Best of luck for all your endeavors. And thank you for joining us. We look forward to bringing you more fascinating conversations with artists and thought leaders as New York theater, the fabulous invalid, regains its invaluable place in American culture. I'm Patrick Pacheco.